Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly Sky Talk week of January 4th through 11th, 2021. This is Peggy Hernandez of the U46 School District Planetarium. And we've got sunrise happening around 7:18, 7:20 in the morning. Sunset isn't until 4:36, a full 10 or 15 minutes later than it was earlier in December. And let's watch the moon and sun move across the sky. And yes, I said moon. We're in the last quarter, waning moon, and it is heading towards a new moon next week. And every day the moon's going to be a little closer to the sun. But on the 4th, which is today, it sets, the moon is gone by about 10:30. If you'll notice, it's moving across the sky. I'll fast forward it a little bit here now. So there it goes. And yep, 10:30, the moon sets in the west. Notice the sun is not very high. Well, that's because we're in winter. It's a little higher than it was a week ago, a tiny bit. But as it moves across the sky, it sets pretty early. And if we aim towards the west, the sun goes down about 4:36. Oh, it'll start to look dark before then. And I want to point out that Jupiter and Saturn are visible. If you go out at 5 o'clock as it's starting to look dark out, Jupiter and Saturn are still there. They're real low on the horizon. As the Earth keeps moving in its orbit around the sun, we're moving ourselves out of the view of Jupiter and Saturn, and soon they'll actually be behind the sun from our point of view. But they're still a little bit visible. Of course, they're still very close to each other. That was not a one-day event. They're moving farther apart away from conjunction, but they're still there if you can catch them. Every day is going to be a little bit worse. But once it finally does get all the way dark out, they're gone below the horizon. And I would say about 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock is when it's fully dark out. And we're heading there right now. I see a satellite zipping by. And if we let's go to 6 o'clock, perfectly good time to go out and observe. Low in the west, we do have a couple bright stars, but the west does not have a lot of bright stars. We're at 5:45 right now. Which is good. We'll stop there. And if I look up in the west, there's this W of Cassiopeia. That's a noticeable one. Deneb, the swan, the tail of the swan. The swan is right here, otherwise known as the Northern Cross. She's dive bombing straight into the trees. Like you might not even notice her head anymore because it's so low. So there's not a ton of really bright stars in the west at this time. But if we turn our bodies and face south, right away, you can't help but notice Mars, and off to the left a little bit more, Orion the Hunter, probably my favorite winter constellation. It's so bright. There's a bunch of really bright stars in the south this time of year. And early in the evening like this, they're actually in the southeast. Let's go a little bit later. So instead of 6 o'clock, let's go like way after supper. Let's go to maybe 7:30. That'd be a good observing time. There's no moon, so it's a great star observing night. And I can easily see Orion the Hunter, the big rectangle. There's 3 stars in a row that make up his belt. And if I follow those 3 up, it leads us to Taurus the bull. It's a letter V. And right above that, right past that, is this beautiful cluster of stars we call the Pleiades. I'm going to zoom in on that because it's a little hard to see without. And right there, that's the face of Taurus the bull. And up here in his shoulder is this beautiful cluster of like 7 stars. 5 of them you can see with your eye. You can block them all off with the tip of one finger. They're so close together. The Pleiades, Taurus, and then Orion below it are 3 great objects to look for in our winter sky as you face south. Capella is another great bright one. Capella the charioteer. I often call this the house because it's kind of a pentagon shape, but Capella is one of the brightest stars in the sky. And at 7:38, notice right down here we've got Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in the sky for humans to see from planet Earth. Way brighter than the North Star. The North Star has never been bright. It isn't bright. Sirius is way, way brighter. Actually, all these stars over here are brighter. These 2 are Castor and Pollux of Gemini the twins. Here's the drawings if you like to see those. Mars is still in the constellation of Pisces the fish. Oh, Uranus is right next to it. This month, Mars is a great landmark to look for to help find Uranus if you want to look at it with binoculars. Otherwise, you can't see it with just your naked eye. And it looks like a dot. in your binoculars if you want to look for that. If we keep moving towards the left, we'll be facing east. All these objects just rose up in the east. And let's go even a little bit later. Let's go to maybe 10:30. 10:30, all these bright stars are up high in the sky, higher in the sky. But Sirius becomes more noticeable. Sirius is often twinkly. I get comments a lot about Sirius being so twinkly, and I want to show you a picture. That twinkly that you see is actually from the star light going through the atmosphere. If you're a human on Earth standing right here and you look straight up at a bright star, you have, a couple hundred miles, let's say, of air molecules for that light to go through to get to your eye. Well, there are things in our atmosphere that bend light waves. I mean, water bends light. So the water vapor in the air can bend the light waves. That actually can make a star look like it has color to it. The atmosphere is also why we see the twinkly, the scintillation, we call it. If a star is above us, we get a little bit of that. But if a star is straight ahead of us, not overhead, but like straight ahead, you don't even need to look up. You say, whoa, look at that bright star. Those stars are often very twinkly because you're looking through thousands of miles of air molecules. So there's a lot more air molecules to bend the light waves before it gets to your eye. So here's another example. Here's a fellow looking at a star. So there's the starlight coming in as white light. When it hits the atmosphere, some of those light waves get bent. And sometimes they get bent towards the red end or maybe the blue or purple end. So sometimes when you stare at a twinkling star, you might notice that it looks colorful. And the star is not actually colorful, but our atmosphere is making it look colorful. And Sirius definitely does that. Procyon can do it. Betelgeuse can do it. Capella can do it, especially as it's just rising. The lower it is on the horizon, the more likely it is to be twinkly. So if we're facing due east at 9:15, if we go even later, 11:15, the moon's just coming up, comes up at 11, goes down at 11 today, Tuesday. And these stars are all up high in the southeast. Those winter stars are great. Winter constellation viewing is fantastic. Oh, I know it's cold. Put on a coat, put on a hat, put on some mittens. The clear nights in the winter are usually the coldest, but man, they are so crystal clear. And there are so many bright stars in the winter. It's just great to go out and observe. Look for Orion, Gemini. And of course, if you face north, you can always look for the Big and Little Dipper. The Big Dipper is in the northeast, standing up on its handle, and it leads you to the North Star, and there is Little Dipper, all visible in the northern sky. So if you get a chance, go outside, find someone to go with. Grab your mom or your dad or a grandma or an uncle or an aunt or an older brother or sister, anyone. Go outside and watch for these awesome constellations.